pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is the approval of the agenda.
Move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments? Denise?
Nick?
Yes.
Jen? Sorry, AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Angie says yes, too.
Sorry, Angie.
Hey,
We
it's a
need to
Thursday.
start over.
It's a
Yes, I
Thursday
know.
meeting. Yeah.
I love
it's
it.
got challenges. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Mr. Ackerman, honoring excellence.
Good to see everyone again, and we're going to mix things up a little bit this evening, as normally we will present awards and different items to guests. Tonight we're being presented with a few items, so that's exciting, and we have a special guest with us this evening. Many of you saw Mrs. Heather Hall, a long-time Kansas City councilwoman, and we had a good conversation just a few moments ago, and just days remaining in her term as a Kansas City councilwoman, and she's here really tonight representing Variety Kansas City, and I know that they left the books that they wanted to present us at your respective tables, and she's going to talk about this, but I just wanted to make just a couple remarks just how incredible Variety Kansas City has been with several incredible partnerships over the years, and you may recall the first ever Harness Cafe a few years ago over at Discovery Middle School. That was a great event and a great program, and as I introduce Heather, and within her biography, it says she has a passion for serving people in the community with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and knowing her for a long time, I completely agree with that. She's a Liberty parent, and she'll probably introduce her companion here this evening, as he's actually a Liberty North graduate, and interned with her office when he was in high school, which is pretty cool as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Heather Hall.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Dallas. Well, thank you so much, Madam President, Board of Directors, Superintendent Tucker. We're so grateful that you gave us a few minutes of your time. So as a person who talks a lot, please, if I start to say too much. But first things first, I wanted to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I've been obviously a Liberty parent forever, and this is my first August school year that I won't have a student in the schools because my daughter decided to graduate a year early, which was totally not fair. And now she's going to go off to college, and I won't be a parent in the school district this year for the first time in 100 million years, it feels like. So I want to thank you for what you've done to educate my children. Their experiences here have been very rewarding. It has led them to do great things and continue to want to do great things. So I'm happy that they have landed in this school district with these people and the students and the teachers that were alongside them. As many of you know, I have been a longtime supporter of people with disabilities in any way, whatever that looks like. One of my favorite partnerships was created with another Liberty parent, Carrie Crosley. She introduced me 7 years ago to a woman by the name of Deb Weibrecht. And if you know Deb, you know that she makes me look like I'm, laying on the ground with no energy. And she wanted to say, how can you help us legislatively in any way in Kansas City get out the word to help people with disabilities in our communities, in our schools, and wherever. And so that started us on a journey where we did the Harness Cafe, like Dallas mentioned. We have done all of the Keep It Free, Think of Me parking spots. So if you see a handicapped spot and you see one below that, that's because of another Liberty parent, Kathleen Flournoy, who started that initiative with the PTAs in the school district to help raise money to do those here in the school district. One of the first school districts in the whole metro to do this and say yes were you all. So thank you for your compassion and your dedication to that. as we've gone, we've had so many other people, Carrie, Deb, Kathleen, like I said, all the Variety KC folks. I've been very fortunate to have a great team of people, like Dallas said behind me. I have Matt Vokey. Matt is a graduate of Liberty Public Schools, Liberty North. He came to me when he was a sophomore in high school, when I was in my first season, and he said, I'd like to come volunteer and be an intern in your office. And he was. And I've had now 16 interns in my office because of such great opportunities that I had with Matt. And then now I have hired him full-time to be my legislative aide, and he's done an extraordinary job under crazy circumstances, as you can imagine. So I'm really excited about that. So as we went along, Deb and all of our friends said, let's write some books. So the first one was Caden's Dream. And I didn't give you a copy of that because I didn't I didn't think about doing that, so I apologize. But maybe I'll talk to Tana and see if the foundation will raise some money and give the libraries these. But what I did was, as a kind of a thank you, I've really enjoyed 8 years of partnership. Dr. Tucker and I, Stephen, we have worked so hard together over the last 8 years on different economic development projects that will benefit the Northland, the school district area, and we've had a really great partnership. And now that I'm leaving, I wanted to leave you with something, and I thought, well, what better thing to leave you than is something that you can give as a gift to educate the children continually. And so we purchased with our office account enough of these books to give you for all of the elementary, middle school, and the Early Childhood Center libraries, and one for each of you. And if you would like more, let me know. We didn't get into the high schools. We weren't sure they would fit well, but we can do that. So this is just a gift to you to say thank you and to continue to remind people that this population of people need to be well served, and we need to always be ever present thinking about the people in these groups. Now, this is a book about Maddox. Maddox was a young man who was an extraordinary kid who wanted to do stuff like everybody else. He wanted to learn how to get on an airplane and fly, but unfortunately we didn't have simulators. We didn't have play areas. So when we had the opportunity to build the new billion-dollar airport, multi-billion-dollar airport, we said, let's do something. And so Deb and I got together and we wrote the Mayor's Council for People with Disabilities, and we said that when they build the new airport, that this playroom must be accessible, must have apparatus for everybody, whether they're visually impaired, physically impaired, whatever it is. We want them to be able to play alongside all the other children. But wait, there's more. We wanted to make sure that Maddox and other kids had an opportunity to practice. So in this book, it talks about Maddox being able to go to the flight simulator room, make an appointment, and go practice it. For people with disabilities of any kind, sensory issues, whatever, they can now practice in Maddox's sensory experience room. There's also one about Molly. There's a meditation room to calm yourself before and after you get off the flight. And then there's a third room, which is probably my most important one in a way, and that's called Olivia's Universal Changing Station. You know, we forget that kids that are little grow up to be adults that are your sizes with disabilities. And are we going to change them in an undignified way on the ground in a public restroom, at an airport no less? No, we're not going to do that. But because none of our eyes were opened or we didn't live like that, we didn't know what we didn't know. Well, now we made a law in Kansas City. I wrote legislation that says anytime there's a family restroom from now on, they have to put a universal changing station. So somebody like Maddox can get lifted up out of his wheelchair and be changed dignified way, and we did that. Now, the bad news is Maddox passed away before the airport opened, but his family was there with us when we opened it, and they got to cut the ribbon and be there to support all that, and it was very exciting. So this is a really important story. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I'm sure all of you are also passionate about that. And so this is our gift to you, and we will continue to do more books. We're actually doing a Netflix series. I'm sure it'll be just as well received as the Patrick Mahomes one, but we're doing one with Variety, and it's going to highlight all the things that we've done in the Metro to help people with disabilities be just as included as the rest of us. Talk about an inclusion revolution. And your school district will be highlighted, not only because of the parking spots, but because of the Harness Cafe and all the other myriad of things you guys do to love on everybody. So I just wanted to, this is my very last meeting as a council person that I'm coming to speak to someone, and I just wanted to do that with you all and say thank you. And I appreciate what you've done and what you'll continue to do, and you have a partner with me if you ever want to do this kind of stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
No blushing by our board, but I do have a presentation and an announcement to make. As tonight, we wanted to formally recognize our Board of Education that sits before us As many have seen in our local various communication platforms, our Board of Education was presented the Missouri School Board Association's 2023 Governance Team Award at the MSBA Summer Summit held last month in Branson. According to the MSBA release, this award is based on the outstanding commitment of the school board and superintendent to ongoing professional development and effective governance practices. The award also recognizes board members' commitment to regional and statewide leadership and to active participation in legislative advocacy for public schools and the students they serve. Finally, something to certainly highlight is that LPS is one of only 17 Missouri school boards to earn this distinction for 2023. We not only want to congratulate our board members that sit here before us, but also Ms. Kim Marie Graham, who completed a long term just this past April. We invited Kim Marie to be here tonight, but unfortunately they were still on vacation. She said they were on vacation. That's the text I received.
New Zealand?
Back. Is she in New Zealand? That's fantastic. But we are certainly grateful to each of you for your leadership, and congratulations on this well-deserved honor. Again, we will be sure to display this award proudly here at the District Administration Center, and here it is. So let's give them a round of applause. And that concludes Honoring Excellence for this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Well done. Has anybody received any comment cards? Nope. Okay. And then, do we want to take a minute just to?
Either way. They're leaving. So,
Since nobody has given me a comment card,
okay.
we're not going to read that.
We're good.
So we go on to consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 4.1 through 4.7.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Denise?
Nick,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. Trying to make this move again. So down to 5.0.
Yeah,
Reports from administration.
under reports from administration, first off, we're going to welcome Dr. Julie Moore to the podium for Innovation and Learning Report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've had a busy month in our department as we have 3 new executive directors who have just done their onboarding and have gotten busy with work. So you'll see a few highlights in our board report, but just wanted to share a few other things that weren't mentioned there. We changed our theme for this coming year, and it's what if. And that really fits in with what Katie Martin, who's our pre-service speaker, talks about, focused on the work of dreaming big for our students and personalized learning for both students and staff. So more to come on that, but that will be our theme as you'll see it throughout the year. Last week we had a director's retreat. Thanks to Angie Reed for stopping by and starting us off. We worked on collective commitments and developed some professional development opportunities for staff this school year that is centered around our graduate profile. We have a principal's retreat next week, and we will do some of the same work looking at collective commitments. I was trying to add up back there. We have 10 new assistant principals, and we have 9 new head principals. Out of those 19, we have 16 that are internal, and I'm very proud of that because it just shows that we're working to develop our own leaders and prepare them for what's next. And then with that, we have our mentor and mentee program that Dr. Van Batavia and Dr. Wilson are leading, and that started today with that group. So they were upstairs on the 4th floor for a couple of hours just getting acquainted with the new principals, with their mentors. We've also been working hard on Senate Bill 681. There is some literacy requirements in there for any student who is not reading at grade level. So we met with principals last week and are will be developing reading success plans for any student who is not reading at grade level. In addition to that Senate bill, if you're in 3rd grade and you're not reading at 3rd grade level, you have to have meetings with parents about retention. Doesn't mean you have to retain students, but you have to have meetings. So we've kind of been planning for that and what that looks like in our district. We've also worked with the middle level team to develop our next steps for competency-based learning, and that includes more consistent feedback for both students and their parents. And then finally, our graduate profile learner progressions have been completed. We will get a copy of that soon to you. We'll be sharing that with principals next week and with staff in September. And our goal for this year is to familiarize them with it and begin finding ways to implement that in their daily lessons in the classroom. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions of Dr. Moore?
I would just like to say thank you for letting me crash your party. It was so great, though, to see all of those people in a single room and then watch them as they entered. They were just so excited, or at least they appeared to be excited, whichever way. And what a great group.
It was, thank you for being there, and we partnered Dr. Seahorn and her department came, and so they were a part of that, and we were able to really work together and collaborate because there's so much that overlaps between our two departments that it just seems more seamless.
What do we currently do if students aren't at grade level? How do we currently respond?
We have interventions for students who aren't at grade level, but we have tier 2 interventions, so we might do small groups. We might do some one-on-one reading with them, but what this bill and what this plan allows is for it to be all more streamlined, and that every student has their own plan. So we know where each student is, and we know what that student needs, and then there's more progress monitoring along the way to ensure that they are showing growth.
So you see this bill as an improvement, or is an improvement of what we were doing, or?
I think it is, and I think it just puts it more into action than these students. Right now, it's very easy if you have students who maybe are struggling with reading to say, I'm going to pull these students into a group, but that might not be what they all need. So just really trying to figure out what that individual student needs, and that might not be a group setting, right? That might be working in all 53, that might be working one-on-one with a tutor, whatever that is. I think it makes it a little bit more individualized.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you use the MAP test to define whether or not they're...
An I-ready.
I-ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so will you start, as students arrive this fall, will you start that
We'll start this fall.
assessment based on
Yes.
the prior year?
Well, we'll
Or will
use
you
that,
do
but
an
we'll do the I-ready,
And-
yes,
yeah.
right at the beginning, and we'll use that assessment to help. But then it's always looking at other assessments as well, right? So if they're a 4th grader or 5th grader or so on, and we have those assessments to look and see, does it show across the board that this student is below grade level, or was it maybe just a one-time something happened, right? Because we know that kids rush through those tests a little bit. Some do, and so just making sure that we have enough data to show that it wasn't just a one-time score.
So will there be any, with these additional individualized plans, will there be any additional need for support, whether that's, you mentioned tutors or any other resources that you'll need to fulfill what you're talking about?
I think that what it is that we need is to better train our teachers in how to help students with reading. And so we have Ellen Keene coming this year, and we decided she's going to work with one teacher at each grade level at each of the elementary buildings, and then we'll have some middle school teachers, and they will be trained where they can then be like a model classroom, and they can go back and share with all of their peers. So there will be several people in every building who are trained in order to go back and share what it is that you can be doing in the classroom, and then taking our MTSS model and making sure that we have Tier 2 interventions spelled out for teachers about what they can do.
And we've, to your question, we've grown those supports as far as specific staff through that all program, right? So it's a mixed bag of both the teacher, even though that may not be their specialty area, it's reading within the content areas. So the teacher has a role to play, but then in those more severe instances, perhaps there's some specialized support that they get, whether it's the tutoring or all 53 or the need for eventually pulling in additional reading specialists.
So will we have a specific metric that we monitor throughout the year, or to track these that fit into this range?
Right.
I don't know if that's any part of the bill requirement, but.
Well, so we will do, obviously we'll have iReady 3 times a year, but what we're going to do is put in instruction. We have a few buildings who've done that over the years, and so they have more points to look at to see that students are growing. And that's been very helpful. So obviously Dr. Schmitz did that at Epic, and a couple of other buildings have done it, where you can see improvement by looking at it every month instead of just looking at it 3 times a year.
And we can tease that out on the school card.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And elevate that with on 2 fronts. It's very personalized, obviously, for the interventions that are needed for the kiddo. Then we can look at it in aggregate.
So we won't have a look at what percent of students need a reading success plan until after the first of the year, right?
Correct.
We'll take that. Okay.
Correct.
And then the retention conversation, that's just 3rd grade?
It's at 3rd grade.
Okay.
Two other things on the front end. Keep in mind, there's also a kindergarten readiness assessment.
Sure.
Right. And so then that gets to your question and around, when will we know? Is it beyond or before the first of the year? I think that's an important piece that fits here. The other thing I would say is that those conversations in and around retention aren't new. It's now just codified in legislature, in statute, that those conversations need to be happening. Those are very collaborative conversations.
Yep.
And oftentimes, it's not just the academic piece and the reasons to either accelerate or retain, but it's also very much a conversation in and around socialization.
Yeah.
Because then you start skewing outside of an individual's peer group, which is the same conversation for accelerated and gifted kids moving beyond their peer group. So it's nothing new, but at the same time, it is codified to this extent. So.
We do have a process for if parents request for their student to be retained. That's usually where it comes from, not from the school, but we have a process to go through with that to make the best decision for the student.
Okay.
I would like to give a shout out to Colleen Jones. I asked her to get into contact with someone who was looking for a place to spend money on STEM and STEAM projects. The feedback I got from the company was she was very prompt, and her list was a very doable list and not asking for $15,000 items. And they appreciated that and probably will have STEM and STEAM items coming her way. But she does not let time lag when there's money on the table. But it's nice to know that when you say, oh, I know somebody, that in fact they do respond, and who they're responding to acknowledges, this is great because these are things, here's a list of items that they need, and we can do that. And it's not high dollar items. And so thank you to Colleen Jones for that.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the mentoring with the principals. I'm excited for all the new, they're new, but they're not new. They're in new roles in many cases, but I would just love to, are they being paired with a more experienced principal?
Absolutely.
Or are Dr. Wilson and Dr. Van Batavia serving as the mentors, or is it kind of both?
Yes, both.
Okay.
So as we went
Yes.
through and looked at how many new administrators we had, we really tried to pair them up with someone who wasn't maybe necessarily the person that they've worked with for a very long time, but giving them a new perspective. So assistant principals get paired with another assistant principal somewhere else in the district, and then principals, typically another principal, but just because of this year and the number, Dr. Schmitz, Dr. Wilson are both have a couple that they're, not Dr. Wilson, I'm sorry, but Dr. Schmitz does. And then I can't remember on Dr. Wilson, so I'd have to look. And then Dr. Van Batavia is mentoring the two high school principals for now, since that's a little bit harder of one too.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I think it's really important, and I just appreciate that, the effort that the principals who are experienced that will be serving in those mentoring roles, the time that they will be spending to help the new people get on board and get comfortable and acclimate. I was also just curious, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, about the summer school and some of the different programs we had. This was something when I was a parent and had elementary kids in the Kids Zone program. I didn't always understand the difference between like Camp Gone Wild or Camp Invention or summer school. So just kind of getting some clarification on what were the different programs we had this summer.
So we had summer school, obviously, in the month of June, and then in July for 1 week, and then in August for 1 week, we had the Camp Invention, which is a STEM camp. It falls under the umbrella of summer school, but we don't get attendance dollars for it, because, and so students, parents have to pay a fee for their student to go that week. But it's run by our administrators, teachers. They do all of the lessons for it. Like I said, 1 week in July and then 1 week in August. And then Kids Zone obviously is month-long through July into the beginning of August, where those students can go and they take field trips all day. And I think this year their theme is like World Traveler. So they're going around to different places just to learn about different places that there are, and that obviously supports the same programming that's done throughout the year with that.
You also have extended school year, which is for our special education students. So outside of summer school in June, services for not all, but many of those students that need it bleed over into the month of July.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Other questions for Dr. Moore?
One quick one. I saw in a couple places there was discussion about Algebra 1.
Yes.
Was there a specific thing that's being tackled there, or I'm just trying to
So
figure
interestingly enough, we're working on our math scores in general and making sure that we're aligned. And one of the things we've noticed from some recent conversations is that our middle school math, or our middle school algebra and our high school algebra are not teaching necessarily to the same standards in the same way. So we are trying to align, because if a student is taking algebra in 8th grade, they're getting high school credit for it, so they should be doing the same thing that they're doing at the high school level. So that's our work right now.
So you felt that the middle school Algebra 1 was something below the high school Algebra 1, and you're trying to bring them...
I don't know that I would say it was below. They just weren't the
a little
same.
different,
And
enough
so just
differences.
looking at
Okay.
scores and trying to figure out why the students aren't performing the same, we felt like they just all needed to be, because what happens also is some students take it in 8th grade, and then the teachers say, you might need to take it again. And then when they go to the high school, it looks a little bit different. So just making sure that everybody's delivering the same curriculum.
Good.
And that's across the high schools too, right?
Correct.
Like, so it's Liberty
Yes.
North and Liberty High School, like they're all collaborating.
Yes, we're also working on some common formative assessments throughout the year in algebra, so that we can track better along the way how they're doing and how they would perform on the EOC at the end of the year. We don't currently have that, so we're working on that as well.
That's great.
Okay, so I know we've learned a lot in communication. I know, this is
You're not
expect
getting
this
off.
in July, I'm sure. It's a Thursday meeting. We'll never have another Thursday meeting, I can guarantee it. No, we've learned a lot in communication competency-based learning, especially at the middle level. I noticed there's a blurb in here about it. We're not necessarily changing anything about the communication level, or are we modifying it? Are we doing anything different? What should I take away from that paragraph about the communication now of competency-based learning?
So two big things are changing. Number one, over the past year, teachers, team of teachers have been allowed to put either success criteria or learning intentions in PowerSchool. And so we felt like that was confusing for parents to not understand this was either an activity or this is what we want them to learn. So we've changed that. Right now we're working on learning intentions. So for all 3 grades, every area, it will be learning intentions within PowerSchool for those and those are already done. We just have to implement them. The other thing we're doing is asking all teachers at the beginning of every new unit to send an email to parents letting them know what the learning intentions and success criteria are for that unit and what they can expect to see by the end. And then we are asking them to communicate more frequently with the ideal time period being every 2 weeks.
Okay, beautiful.
And to kind of summarize that, this notion of through-year engagement as compared to periodic focus groups or let's gather a team or the quarter or end of the semester in an effort to have more iterative, shorter bursts and cycles of feedback. So,
Okay, good.
we're going to let you go.
Thank you.
They may have more questions later.
No, I'm
Thanks, Dr. Moore. Next up then is Dr. Andrea Dixon Seahorn. As she's coming to the podium, you'll notice a new title in regard to student equity and access. And with that comes additional direct reports and others that have been folded under her leadership. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Dixon Seahorn.
Actually, you will see at the title of my board report that I must have been feeling nostalgic when I wrote my report because I still reference it as Equity Office. But from this moment forward, we are now the Department of Student Equity and Access. And so as you can see in our report, the departments that will come under that purview will be student services and all those key pieces associated with that, special programs, and special services. So I'm very excited about working with Ms. Rebecca Bressman, Dr. Jessica Meisenheimer, and Dr. Tony Cook with respect to just creating more equitable access for our learners. And so what I would like to highlight this evening are just a few things out of the report. The first is around the Equity in Schools grant. We are very pleased to know that we are now in the year 2 of that endeavor, and so at the onset of the month of August, we'll be looking for that second installment in the amount of $125,000, and that will allow us to do a couple of things. Number one, it will allow us to facilitate our Belonging PD, and that has a number of components, including building equity cadres. As you know, we're in partnership with the Core Collaborative in that endeavor. But then more importantly, and I'm so excited about this year 2 of this piece, and that is around the equity and real world learning experiences for 8th grade students in particular, and their college campus career center experiences that they will get to partake in again this year. And so when you talk about Colleen Jones, who all you have to do is say the word and she makes it happen, based on feedback from students as well as staff, we are going to start those field experiences earlier this year. As you recall, we didn't do them until second semester. Well, they're going to happen as early as October of this school year. And so they'll run from October through December the 8th, give or take. We will be going to not only William Jewell College, not only UMKC, in terms of local partners, but we will also be boarding charter buses and going to KU, the Missouri Western State University in St. Joe, as well as University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. So we are so excited about this opportunity for our 8th grade students, And this time, we also have done something a little bit different based on, again, the feedback from students and us staff, and that is every learner will have the experience at a career center, at a four-year college, at a community college. So we've heard from our students, and we are embracing their voice, and we're going to make it happen for this upcoming semester. So very, 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 very excited about that opportunity. The other thing I wanted to share comes from the Special Programs Department, the English Language Learning Department, so English learners. There's going to be a special event on August the 1st, and this is where families who speak languages other than English will be able to come and just kind of have registration opportunities. We'll have interpreters on hand, laptops, staff that will be available to assist our families with the registration process for the upcoming school year. And so Karen had asked, I want to be there, but I don't see the time. And so we know that that event will take place from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So very, very, very excited about that opportunity as well. So those are the things that I wanted to highlight out of my report, but I'll be more than happy to take any questions at this time.
Is that program with the non-English speakers, is that the first year we're doing this, or have we done that in the past?
This is the second year for this event.
Got it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and it was so successful last year. We're like, why wouldn't we do it again?
Exactly. Good.
Mhm.
Questions of Dr. Dixon Seymour?
Do we, for an event like that, do we have a way of engaging the students who get their credentials in another language in high school?
You know, that's a good question. So our seal of biliteracy students, you know what, I don't have an answer for that, and I'm not sure if we have engaged them in that capacity, and it may not be too late to make that happen. So I will speak with Dr. Meisenheimer about how can we incorporate our seal of biliteracy students or others in that opportunity.
Real world learning.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And I love the expansion of the trips to different colleges. That's fantastic, and appreciate you and Colleen, if that's who we're supposed to thank. That's great. I guess what I'm wondering now is, I mean, we take year one and we build year two, and then the grant goes away.
I'm already down that road with you.
Okay.
You and I are here. I'm already,
I was like, what happens next?
and I'm already having early conversations with this lady over here, Madam CFO. As a matter of fact, I just said something to Dr. Moore about that today. Hey, we got to already be thinking about where the money's going to come from to sustain this.
Yeah.
It's great that we've had the grant funds, and I think you may have asked me today, Dr. Moore, well, yeah, how much does that cost? I said, after year two, I'll have a solid idea of what this really costs so that we can explore ways to fold this into our budget. Because no, this cannot stop just because the grant funds have expired.
There may be future partnership opportunities too, so.
Awesome.
I just one more shout out for you. I'm really grateful for the engagement with parents that Student Services is doing, the advisory committee. I think that's really important and wonderful, and I'm glad to see that that's continuing to happen. So just kudos for that.
Dr. Cook, yes, absolutely. She is, this is going into year two of that work as well for her, of partnering with parents, hearing their voice, so that we can get better at getting better with serving our students.
And Karen stole my shout out.
Sorry.
I second that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dixon Seymour. Next up then is Miss Cindy Sullivan, who is, I think, looking right at, what are we at, 3 weeks into the new fiscal year.
You do this every time.
Okay.
Every time.
Sorry.
I was going to say good evening. It's hard to believe we're almost a month in. New fiscal year.
He steals your thunder.
I'll just stop
Every
with
time.
introducing you.
No, and then they're over here wishing me good luck.
Are these your friends?
We just figure after June, you're not going to show up.
Just roll up the sleeves and get going. So along with our usual work, wrapping up the year end and trying to close things out, we have been meeting with all 19 of those new administrators, and I had the pleasure today to speak to the mentees and mentors, and I always love that opportunity to get in front of people that are just starting out in those roles, because it's just ground to set the stage right for them. So I appreciate that opportunity that Dr. Wilson and Dr. Van Batavia gave me to come speak to them today. And we also will give them the opportunity next week to speak to all of the principals at the retreat. So thank you, Dr. Moore, for that, because anytime we can get in front of them as a group and just review and reset and repeat, it's a great opportunity, again, to set the year going in a good tone. So always love those opportunities. We unbelievably are already preparing for the audit as well. So we got our list this past week, and Denise has been so great at getting that disseminated so people can get all of that information back, and that will begin with them at fieldwork here in September, so you'll be hearing more about that. Currently, we're watching Senate Bill 190, which was signed earlier this month by the governor, and it has implications on property tax collections. So we will have more to share with you on that as counties across the state begin conversations in earnest about the implementation or not of that bill. So it's property tax related and pension tax or pension taxability related. So we will have, like I said, more to come for that later on. The Audit and Finance Committee did meet this past week on Monday evening. Had great discussion about the financials, as they usually do. Had good questions relating around vendors. They were very interested in bond and how that is going, so I was able to share some of that information with them. So they take great interest in those projects, and wanted a little recap about the refinancing of the lease participation certificates that we paid off. So they just wanted a little bit more explanation on that, so we were able to talk about that a little bit. They also were very interested in Senate Bill 190 and had some good questions on that, so obviously we'll be following up with them on that. But other than those things to update you briefly on tonight, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Have we gotten any indication or heard anything from the county in terms of positions? I know that there have been like 80 counties out of the 114 that have taken some positions on how they're going to process things.
I had lunch last week with a group of people from around our city, and it is they're indicating that our council, our commission, does want to enact Senate Bill 190, and they are eager to vote on that, is the latest I'm hearing. And the collector's office was able to appear at that commission meeting and indicated that we're too far into the 23 tax season to do anything about it right now. And there are so many unanswered questions and vagueness about that bill that we're hoping to put that off a little bit.
And speculation that it'll be litigated, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the word, right?
Yes, that's what I think we're hearing in those conversations. I know on the St. Louis side, there was a county that narrowly voted to move forward with it. I know Jackson County has had similar conversations.
Yeah.
The challenge right now is how do you quantify your revenue stream for property taxes by age bracket?
Right.
We certainly struggle to do that, but then the county providing that information isn't able to do that yet.
Right.
So it's hard to quantify it, not only for our district, but all of the districts represented in Clay
Right.
County. So.
And the collector's office would have to reset software. There's just, and how do you interpret Social Security aid? There's just so many questions. And then like Dr. Tucker said, quantifying what that means to us is just really a difficult thing to do.
More to come.
Yes.
Other questions of Ms. Sullivan this evening?
Move quickly before we come up.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Anderson for operations report.
Good evening. A couple items and then a brief presentation here I'll give in a minute. I did want to update you all, first of all, on security staffing. As you all know, we effectively doubled our internal force back a few months ago. And so our team has been actively working with not only HR, but some building principals to kind of go through the interviewing process, and really excited to report because we were unsure if we could get there where we're at, but we are fully staffed as we get ready to roll into the school year. We just were unsure kind of how the market would be for positions, and we've done really well, and I think feel very excited about the team that we're bringing in. And then just so you know, like we did last year, we'll share something with you all with the bios and kind of introducing the full team, their background and experience. But again, really thankful to Gary and the HR team and being able to pull that together as effectively as they did. Also, we had our department operations. It was, I guess, a retreat. It was a couple hours that we spent kind of reviewing and our goals from this current year, but also laying out goals for next year. You'll see those here next month in our annual report as we present kind of where we see the department going over the course of the next year. And then those will be updated each month in our monthly report, as you've seen over time. And you can see in tonight's report as well. The other thing I was going to share, which was kind of a fun exercise that we did, is we challenged every department to kind of think. We called it Project 2033. We've been spending a little bit of time talking about AI and kind of emerging technologies, and where each department kind of saw challenges or opportunities for them to kind of embrace or be thinking about, maybe not implementing just yet, but just kind of thinking creatively. So we had a really good conversation about how maybe to best prepare and think ahead to what things will look like in a few years, and specifically kind of a 10-year look back was kind of the challenge. And it was a good, interesting conversation, and I think we'll continue to kind of be thinking about how we can utilize some of the technologies out there in the coming years to best increase our efficiencies and how we operate. And then the last thing, receiver.
Wow, I'm telling you, Thursdays.
It is Thursday. Can get the part? Yeah, that's. There's a lot of layers to that one.
Get your questions ready for Mr. Anderson.
So I'm going to kind of walk through fairly quickly here a quick update on where we stand. So basically, we have the first wave of projects. We're finishing up design development. We're getting to pivot to construction drawings to go out to bid. So things are becoming very real very quickly on several of these projects. You've seen this before. This is just kind of an outline of what the next few years will look like and how these projects are packaged together. So if you could go to the next slide. So this is South Valley and Discovery are effectively the same project, just kind of an inverse where how they're located. And they're just additions off the back. It's a gym, middle level size gym. In addition, you can see on that lower image kind of a stage. And then if you could advance one slide. That's just a brief outline of the site plan. The upper one shows when it's effectively working as PE. If you go back real quick. And then the one up top to right is kind of what it will look like when there's a performance. Go ahead and advance. And then these are some renderings of what it will look like when there's a presentation or a performance above, and then it gives you kind of a perspective shot of how this looks as a cross-section for that space. This has been a very challenging project, bringing together a pretty diverse group of individuals. It's been a lot of fun, but it's been a significant challenge to kind of get to the point where we're at. But I think everybody's pretty excited about where we've landed this. So these are now kind of in that putting together construction drawings, all the details. We'll go out to bid here in about a month, and then we look to kind of, that's going to be about a 1.5-year project once we get rolling.
If I'm looking at this right, you get sound panels and stuff up top, right? Is that?
There's a whole lot going up there for sound and noise and how we protect lighting, and it's been a lot of collaboration and trying to figure out how best to protect what we put up there and along the sides.
I would assume we're not the first school to ever do this with.
We're not the first, but I think we've kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. Okay. And we're investing quite a bit to make sure, the idea, obviously, most of the time it's going to be used as a PE space.
Sure.
But it's really critical for us that if we're going to do as a performance space, so we have the soft seating. There was a debate there, and we had to do the soft seating, right? And then some of the noise baffling. We'll have kind of a floor carpet that will go, you can't see that here. We'll put additional curtains to kind of protect with sound. Quite a bit of time has been spent kind of working with the consultants on that.
What's the seating capacity?
500, 5.25, I think.
Okay, so
it's moved a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think some additional seating out front.
So you can get like a grade level in at a time.
Yes.
Maybe 2, but not the entire school.
I mean, basically, it's a little bit more than what they currently have when they have a performance in the cafetorium.
Cafetorium?
Yes.
So, remind me, the stages that are in the cafetoriums, are they staying SAR?
I'm sorry, are the what?
The current ones.
Are they remaining?
Are the current cafetoriums remaining the same as they are?
Yes. So we're having conversations of how to utilize that space. So one of the things they've talked about is they may use the existing stages for rehearsal and all that, so they can keep that, because that stage, when it's not being used for performance, they talked about ping pong tables and doing some other things up there. It's only like 2 feet up
Right.
to the
Right.
stage. So we're going to try to maximize its use as much as we can. So I think right now the idea is that those spaces would be used for performances and potentially other classrooms.
It will be so nice not to have PE in the hallways.
It will. Agreed.
That is amazing.
Okay, next slide. This is Epic. So you see in the upper left kind of a site plan, the addition coming off to the north. And then if you see behind that addition, there's a little kind of bump out. That's the art room that I'll share here in a minute. And then the site plan here shows it's kind of a similar concept where you have the gym with the performance space. That performance space here will double as the music room. And then further back in that blue space is the art room, and then just a general transition area and a conference room as well. And that's what the rendering of what the exterior will kind of look like, at least for right now.
And all these extensions have a storm shelter, right?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So all 3 of these boxes are storm shelters.
Yeah.
That's kind of the foundation for all of them. Great.
And we're limited on that size. That's a mini gym, it looks like.
It's a little bigger than Franklin.
Okay.
And some of that was driven by budget and restrictions of just trying to kind of make it all
I know
come
that's a pretty
together.
tight site, too.
Yeah, it is.
It kind of falls off.
It does. I think we feel really kind of falls off to the west.
Yeah.
I think we have a pretty good footprint to the north.
Okay.
They felt pretty good about that. We don't have to do any retaining walls along that line.
But it's a full court. I mean, one of the options was a half court. I mean,
Yeah, it's
so-
a full court. I mean, again, Franklin's a full court, right? It's a little tight. There's a little more room, I think, between the lines and the wall here as compared to Franklin, but it's a little bit smaller elementary size gym. And then this is just real quickly, the upper image shows kind of that transition of what the music class, if the stage was open to the PE, just to give you perspective. And then the lower right is the art room, and then, of course, just a shot of the gym.
And we are talking about 300 students in this gym, right? Whatever it is at Epic.
Yes, yeah. And if, there's an event with parents, I could sit.
Sure.
Yeah. Next. This is about as pretty as we got because we're moving so quickly on tennis.
It's underway.
So as you can see, that's moving along pretty well. They poured the retaining wall, so this is the one that's furthest along in the process. So it'll be a busy summer out there as we kind of move into the next phases. Next.
And that will not be done by the time school starts, right?
That will not be done by the time school starts. We're going to do everything we can to get it up and running as early as we can this fall, but I think right now it's kind of in that October timeframe.
Okay.
But we're going to see if there's ways we can cheat that a little bit. It's
Yep.
just the phasing of the work and site work and when you do site work compared to when you do the tennis work. And so we're trying to figure out a path there.
And we will have lost parking spaces, obviously, in that area, but those additional parking spaces that are around that in the gray,
Yeah.
I'm assuming won't be ready until.
Right, that was part of that, kind of how that comes together. I think they feel, the building feels comfortable that they can get by kind of the start of the year. We added the football spots,
That's
with
right.
and then we added the one with the fine arts.
Yep.
So we've kind of picked up some
Okay.
along the way. So I think when it's all said and done, we'll lose, I think, about 80 spots
Okay.
net, but I think they were comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Next. And then the next 2 slides, this is Liberty North and then Liberty Highs here in a minute. And again, thank you all. We're going to have a special board meeting next week to hear the bids that came in today. We're still kind of working through some of that. So basically, that's turf at both baseball, softball, or both complexes, and then there are alternates for the middle aux field that we potentially will accept as well. And then
How do you work that timing between baseball, softball, and then baseball?
We spent a lot of time talking through that and meeting with the coaches and the ADs and the building leaders. So the way that will work is we are going to do everything we can and that's part of the reason we're going to have the special meeting to get the turf in, to procure and produce the turf. I think there's probably a 50-50 chance, especially at Liberty High, because the grading work is so significant there that come March 1 is their target for baseball, that they won't be able to play on that field. And I think they're aware that that's a challenge, and so they've come up with a contingency plan. But again, we're going to do everything we can to kind of push that forward. But of course, weather can always intervene, but we'll do what we can. And we're going to communicate all this detail once we have it all kind of hammered out with the bidding that's coming forward. The next project here is the distribution center. This is that area kind of south of the facility site. And this is we've talked before, is to accommodate the purchasing department and also storage for all district storage, especially as related to nutrition services, cold storage, freezer, and dry food storage, and then all the other storage we have. The only department that's moving down here in terms of personnel is purchasing and distribution.
Cold storage, is it part of the green?
Yes. Yeah, that's both cold and freezer.
Dry.
Yeah, and dry. I think it's all three.
And how does that size compare to what we currently have?
For the food storage?
Yeah.
We do not have cold or freezer storage presently, and that's really one of the big drivers to this project. So it compares very favorably to what we have presently.
So everything is a gain?
Everything's a gain. That's right.
Were you asking like compared to what we were leasing?
Yeah, because I had heard at one point that because of what transpired with supply chain issues, we wanted to have capacity
Correct.
Right.
more than what we had capacity for previously.
To Karen's point, we have, through the pandemic and since, we have rented space down in Independence that we've used to store. This is more than what we have down there.
Okay.
Yeah, we've just used that to kind of temporarily hold us over.
So we will drop the leased space
Yes.
for storage, right? when
Yep.
this comes in.
As soon as this is ready to go.
And I love Hollis and the work they do with schools. I'm assuming they have a good handle on distribution centers and storage and things of that nature, but you may not know this off the top of your head. Do they partner with others who do this on a regular basis for like huge food distribution companies, et cetera?
Yeah, we have worked closely with there's consultants all over the
Yep.
place, as you can
Yep.
imagine. Warehouse, we brought in some warehousing consultants because we're trying to narrow the footprint so the aisles are smaller. We have to get unique forklifts to kind of get up
Yep.
3 or 4 high, so there was a lot of conversations in around that. But to House's credit, these are not uncommon with other districts. They've done quite a bit of work, and I know the team, I've not been part of that, but they did a couple field trips
Okay.
to see some of the work. I think one in Blue Valley, they did the park.
Okay.
District 1, very similar to this, a little bit bigger than ours, but
Good.
so,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
we feel pretty comfortable there. And I think there may be one more. No, yeah, that's the image of the building, what it will look like. Pretty simple and straightforward. And this is the old library that we are showing 3 departments moving into this space, primarily technology and the server room. That's kind of in that, I don't even know how to describe that color, green, I suppose. And then blue is the fine arts department, and then Kid Zone's kind of in the middle of that, in that orange space. There's some unfinished space in yellow that right now we are not building out, could be used for future use. So that as well as kind of entering that final stage of design.
So that already exists, we're just not doing anything with it.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Physically, it's there.
building
We're
is
not-
there.
We're not renovating it.
We will be renovating it.
The yellow part?
Oh, I'm sorry, the yellow part,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll clear it out. I think
Got
there's a
it,
bunch of
got
stuff
it.
there, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But the rest of this is built out, right?
Yeah, we're not doing anything to the exterior other than maybe we're going to add some windows and clean up some of the finish on it, but other than that, it's all interior work.
And your timeline on that takes it, I mean, that's next summer, so about this time next year, that's finished, so will that then open up spaces that will, I guess, fall
Yeah.
in line with renovation on the back end?
So the 2 associated conversations, one would be at the support services facility. 2 of these departments are there now. And then, of course, the purchasing department is going down to the one we just spoke of. In addition, here, we have technology that's below us in the 2nd floor who will relocate their entire operation here. So there'll be opportunities here. So as part of the planning that will come here in the coming months, having conversations about both support and about the floor below us. That's all I had.
That's good.
I'd say I'd be
Exciting.
happy to take any questions.
One other thing to add, it's not a question, but as more of this was taking shape, another piece of the conversation is communicating it out
Yeah.
to our patrons, given their support earlier this spring. So that conversation's already taking place with Dallas
Yeah.
and how we can provide regular updates. You'll recall that we leverage Let's Talk as part of our engagement portal on our webpage in our facility master planning conversations. Put a lot of the concepts and ideas that they ended up thinking about on the ballot there. We're going to leverage it as well, and that worked pretty well. And it also creates that two-way engagement of the ability for patrons to be able to ask questions if they have a particular question around projects.
Yep. And so beginning next month, as we've done in the past, for those who've been around a while, you'll receive a monthly report apart from operations. It's just a construction update that will have the Hollis and Miller kind of prospectus of the project, what it's going to look like, the benefit of the project, schedule. And then the complementary piece will be Newkirk Novak, who's the new construction team, that they do a monthly report that just will show you pictures and provide kind of updates on how things are going. So we'll put those two together and get those in front of you each month, and then those will upload to Let's Talk as well.
The transition to LED lighting, is that happening at some schools now?
We had a long conversation meeting just this morning. We have been ongoing, trying to figure out how to pull that off while school is in session. We're also working closely with Evergy, who has some grants in place for some dollars to leverage that, and so that's part of the reason we're going to move quickly. In fact, I was going to try to find a time with Dr. Moore to see how much of an inconvenience we can be in our buildings beginning here this fall. So we're trying to work through some strategies of how to do that, but it'll start pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is back to the security and adding, you said almost doubling the staff, right?
Yep.
So we do a training. So will it look different because we're adding so much staff? How are they going to be a culture? How are they going to be cultured into this system?
Right. That's a great question. I met with Gary Majors actually today about this issue, and he shared kind of an orientation. I have it back in my office. We'll share it with you here probably next week. And it's kind of an outline of the program that he puts his team through. Very comprehensive, just kind of getting them acclimated to the expectations, and it's a little different environment for many of them. But it'll be a very programmed couple days of time with each of them. So yeah, I felt good. We talked about that. It's going to be pretty organized.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next up then, 5.5, Human Resources Report, and we will welcome Dr. Sarah Marriott to the podium, who, kind of like our fiscal year, has been on the job now for 3 weeks. So welcome to Liberty Public Schools.
Thank you.
We got some questions too.
After I just witnessed Dr. Moore, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I know enough.
You've been saving them.
It's my fear. No, as you guys are well aware, our department has significantly changed since your last board meeting. So on July 5th, we welcomed 2 new directors to our HR department. Tanika Brown, who is the HR Director of Classified Staff, who is a current and former employee of the Liberty Public School District, so we are excited, and she has transitioned exceptionally well to the HR department. And then the second hire is Dr. Leah Copeland, who is the HR Director of our certificated staff, and she has also done an exceptional job. And we are continuing to work with Christelle Morgan, who is our Executive Director of HR Operations. And so we are meeting on a regular basis and talking about all the pertinent HR-related things that are happening. But one of the pieces that we have been busy taking some time with is reviewing policies and procedures, while really looking for some opportunities for growth and development for the Liberty School District and how we can really shore up some of those processes and procedures to bring consistency across all departments and putting that as an emphasis. Regarding staff, this month you guys are approving 9 exempt staff hires and 9 exempt and 34 non-exempt hires, so that brings the total to 104 new employees for the 23-24 school year. Currently, we have 2 vacant certificated teaching positions and 1 vacant assistant director position, but we are continuing to work very hard with recruitment and conducting some interviews and reviewing applications. So we feel confident that those positions will be filled by the time school begins in August. Our classified team, including Ms. Brown and recruiter Kelly Baker, are working to fill all of the vacant classified staff positions prior to the first day of school, and I can state that they are making tremendous progress, and Our team cannot give bigger accolades to Kelly Baker and her recruitment efforts. She does really a phenomenal job of sending terrific applicants to us, which makes, I think, the department lead's jobs much easier in being able to identify high-quality candidates. And then the final piece is, our two final pieces, we're going to continue with Kelly Services to provide substitute staffing needs for the district for the 23-24 school year. And then the final piece is Team Liberty meetings are scheduled, and the first order of business is going to be looking at insurance benefits. I welcome any questions. I may not have the answer, but I'm going to do my best.
That's comprehensive.
I love it.
Got a few more for Steve, but.
And that Team Liberty meeting is actually pretty quickly after the start
Yes.
of school, so they don't waste time.
No.
In diving in, and again, working with Michelle Baldwin as our facilitator, who's done a great job for us. So I know Dr. Marriott was able to attend and observe their work alongside Dr. Delsa, who assisted, and Ms. Sullivan. So it's a great group.
Just welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you're here officially.
This is not going to happen all the time.
I know, I feel like it's a tease, just to get me back to the next one.
That's right.
Thank you all.
Anything else for Dr. Marriott?
No, but thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, then, as far as superintendent's report, just a few highlights. I want to actually pick up with one of the items that Dr. Moore mentioned, and that is the principals meeting this morning as far as mentoring alongside Ms. Sullivan. I was able to step in for a few minutes and welcome them. To add another layer to it, it is both formal and informal. Informal in the sense that the mentee can reach out to the mentor at any point for guidance. There are structures in place as far as the number of hours. It's actually built in and around the Missouri Learning Development Series, as far as leadership series, through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and has structured modules that they work through: visionary leadership, instructional leadership, innovative leadership. So it's pretty healthy and in-depth as it relates to support for new leaders. Just wanted to mention that. A couple of other pieces that I teased out in my report for this evening. The strategic leadership team met earlier this week for a couple of days with G&D and Associates with Scott Fuller. You'll recall it was back in 2018-19 where we started those conversations about resetting and rethinking our strategic plan. It's been that long. And so this year we're looking at two pieces. It's revising or updating our strategic plan as we enter into 23-24. And then later on this year, probably mid-year, December into January, really kind of resetting and rekindling our strategic plan process for beyond 23-24. And continuing to work with Scott in engaging our staff, our students, our community in a variety of ways. We had close to 3,000 points of engagement last time we did this. We have some additional tools, including Let's Talk, like we talked about earlier, that we will likely incorporate, but just wanted you to be aware of those two pieces. Later this fall, you'll see the revised strategic plan for 23-24, and then we'll give you kind of a calendar and timeline of events as we really think about the future for Liberty Public Schools and beyond 23 and 24 school year into the future. School does start in just a few days. At Epic Elementary, they are on track to begin on August 9th and welcoming back, as Nick mentioned, nearly 300 students and their staff and the new leader at the helm. And then a few days later, August 23rd, Liberty Public Schools will resume. And so with that comes a lot of preparation, as we've done this summer, but then also welcoming teams back, staff and teachers alike, for retreats, for meetings, for in-service, professional development, professional learning, and so we look forward to that. Earlier this month, I attended the AASA, American Association of School Administrators, Legislative Advocacy Conference in Washington, D.C. I know a couple of you engage at that level, but want to thank our entire Missouri delegation, whether it's on the House or the Senate side, for taking time to spend with us. Several of them met with us face-to-face or tasked their senior leadership, their senior kind of advisors to connect with superintendents from Missouri. It included both superintendents as well as some business officials, and that the Missouri Association of School Administrators partners with the Missouri Association of School Business Officials to be able to attend this event each summer. I included some talking points as far as areas of focus that we honed in on for conversations that really focus in on federal revenue streams and federal funding of public education, from nutrition services all the way to connectivity and internet support, down to children's online privacy. IDEA is always a topic that we want to speak to, and that it's never really fully funded, along with the American Rescue Plan and those funds sunsetting here in the not-too-distant future and impact on districts, along with the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and how we can better support mental health needs along with safety and security needs of public education. Again, fruitful conversations, and as we're able to look into this next school year, both fiscally and academically, we have a channel through the federal level with every single one of our Missouri delegation offices, so we appreciate the time they took with us. The last couple things I would share is as it relates to the start of the year. I included this piece again. I had it in my report last month, and it's really returning student registration. Dallas and his department, along with Student Services, has been pushing out information to recapture, refresh, reset our incumbent families and students, and ensuring that they give us the most recent information so that we can have that on file. That has been out for some time, but our goal is to have that information completed by Monday, August 7th. A last item that you'll see in the coming days from our communications department is 23 things to know for 2023. A lot of that in years past, we've done 30 things to know, which was a video series. This is more kind of a push piece in 23 increments that are digital pieces as far as important information for students and families and staff to know as we approach the start of the school year. Last thing that I would say is in the coming days, we've got a lot of events and activities, meetings, really leading up to convocation and that big event prior to the start of school. So be on the lookout for invites and dates and things that are forthcoming. So with that said, we'd open it up for any questions you all have of me.
I registered my kids yesterday, and it was, I don't know, felt like it was easier this year,
Good.
so people should not be worried. It was good. So
As soon as you said that, I had flashbacks to the COVID registration, which was not as easy. So I appreciate you saying that.
So it was good. Very easy. And people should opt in for bus. That's probably the other thing, too.
Yeah,
That's
that's another good reminder.
No other questions? Have we run out? Maybe.
Probably not.
The new Teacher Innovation Institute that starts on the 10th.
Yes.
What's our expectation as board members?
A couple
for that
things.
day?
Yeah, so that kicks off, and we do typically have a welcome from our cabinet, and then also our board leadership, board president, or in the past, I know vice president has stepped in and assisted with that formal welcome. That's the only speaking responsibility. Everyone else is absolutely welcome. We kick it off with a breakfast, and then kind of get into our programming, do some introductions, and welcome. Certainly do not have to stay for the full entirety of the program over those couple of days, but we can get that information out to you. Anything else to add to that, Dr. Moore?
No, we'll be there that morning.
Okay. All right.
Board policy updates?
So you have a list of several policies that are provided to you this evening on second read. We saw them earlier last month. We did include one that was not on last month's agenda, and that is board policy EGAAA, reproduction of copyrighted materials, and included that because the revision is minor. It literally is just a change in address. So we hope you're okay with that and looking at it on first read rather than two reads, but can certainly do that. Otherwise, would present each of those for your consideration this evening.
I move the board approve policy IGAB, IGC, IKE, IL-1, IND, and EGAAA.
Second.
Well done.
Questions? Denise?
Nick,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
New business.
7.1 is an item that we've pulled from consent agenda, and it's listed as check number 718813, that is being issued to Ms. Angie Reed in the amount of $22 for reimbursement of an expense that was incurred from the
year
Great
ago.
Ideas Summit in Branson. That's the MSBA Summer Summit that was held, which several of us attended. So I would present that to you for your consideration.
Move the board approve check number 718818 to Angie Reed in the amount of $22 for reimbursement of expenses at the Igniting Great Ideas Summit.
Second.
Ms. Denise?
Nick,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Abstain.
motion carries.
7.2 then is a continuation of a conversation we began back in June, and that is our annual interviews tied to the Audit and Finance Committee appointment that then wrapped up earlier this afternoon with our final interview. So we'll turn that over to you, Ms. Reed.
So we interviewed several individuals, and we have a motion on the books. So if somebody would like to read that motion.
I move the board appoint Rachel Dwiggins to serve on the Audit and Finance Committee effective July 27, 2023 through June 30th, 2026.
Second.
If I may, I'd also like to thank all three who put their names in.
Absolutely.
And came and
Thank you.
Put themselves out there to volunteer for this work. I mean, it's important to have that. I know in years past, we've sometimes struggled, but really appreciate that.
And they were good candidates, and we hope that they will consider future
That's right.
opportunities
Right.
when they arise.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Thank you for those comments. Ms. Aldridge?
Nick,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
The next item then is 7.3, last item under new business. This is not new to the board. We've been walking you through this over the course of really the last year as we were filling roles at the administrative cabinet level in an interim capacity and then looking to do some restructuring. So what you have shared with you this evening is the final organizational chart for the 23-24 school year as we've typically done in the month of July, and bringing that to you for approval. It does kind of live at that higher level, so to speak. Incorporates our cabinet, certainly starting with our community to our Board of Education down to our cabinet level. Speaks to the operations department and their structure, along with business services, human resources, student equity and access, along with innovation and learning. Many of those faces you will recognize. Many of those we have brought to you for consideration for employment rolling into this new year, as you were introduced to some of them this evening in respective departments, but we'll present that to you this evening for your consideration.
I move the board approve the LPS 2023-2024 organizational chart.
Second.
Comments, questions?
It's just very exciting.
Well, and it reflects a lot of hiring.
It does.
And a lot of work, but then moving forward, a lot of onboarding and acclimating one with another, so thanks.
I do like the pictures, so we can put a face,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of new people on this chart, but it also, I think, I feel like we've needed this for a while.
Sure.
To get things kind of better organized. And I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, and it looks really good. And most of you look really good.
Most of you.
It's hard to tell because your picture is like the size of a pin.
You want to know who?
So the ones I could see. Good.
Good save.
Fair enough.
I know. So, any other questions, comments? Okay.
Nick,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
motion carries.
Legislation and advocacy. Is there, Mr. Byrd, did you go to the delegate meeting?
In Branson, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes, I did attend.
Okay, was there anything big that came of that?
The biggest discussion was related to, let me look at my notes. Let me share
Okay.
at the next meeting, okay?
Okay.
Let me look at it. There is an item that got a lot of attention, but let me take a look at it and report. One item.
I know Karen and I had talked about briefly, because she picked this up and I had not paid close attention. They're asking for advocacy statements, because that's how MSBA drives their lobbyist. And one of the things that is not included at this point in their handbook is the movement of elections. And it has never been something that MSBA has apparently lobbied for, because they don't lobby unless it falls into that delegate handbook. However, that being said, any changes to those issues is due to MSBA on Labor Day at 5 p.m. And so I would say, if there's anybody who has strong feelings, write something up. But it has to be submitted to MSBA by 5 p.m. on the 5th of September.
Are you talking regarding moving elections to the November date? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, because that's come up every legislative year.
Right.
And it's something we submitted locally, I believe. We had a local, or as a district, that was part of what we sent to our
Right.
delegation, as far as we prefer not to keep our elections. Didn't we?
You're talking about just our separate legislative
Yes.
priorities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That
in-
channel as compared to
Right.
the MSBA priorities.
But it almost seemed like MSBA was making the point, we can't do anything about this unless you tell us as delegate assembly that we need to do that. And so-
I believe their words were similar to the line of, their marching orders come from that advocacy handbook. And so for the lobbyist, if those issues are not part of what the membership has said they want to be lobbied for or against, they won't deal with it. Doesn't mean that LPS by itself can't do it.
Correct.
But the bigger piece of MSBA doing it. So if if you're so inclined to kind of look at what we've used for our pieces and what MSBA has, it's on their website.
And you said no later than September, Labor Day?
September the 5th, Labor Day.
Well, so what would we have to then, so we would have to, is that something that the delegate assembly would have to approve then?
Right, but what they do is they take that, any issues that come from the districts, they go to MSBA. MSBA has a core group that looks at the suggestions for what to lobby for, and then they fashion it and put it into the assembly book that is voted on in November.
If we were to submit something, do we then have to be the ones to go argue for, or is that something that the MSBA committee handles?
That's something the MSBA committee handles.
At the delegate assembly, the delegates can get up to speak to those items. So
They can.
one of the issues, the big issues last year was some of the language around open enrollment in MSBA's positions and their lobbying groups' positions on those. And there was a lot of discussion, letters submitted from a few boards that voted on those. I think with some of the open enrollment resolutions that were passed by, hundreds of boards last year, that's something that I think that'll be another discussion piece of this one. But those get incorporated into that
book,
resolution book for the delegate assembly, and then delegates can speak.
And is our study session on the 5th of September or on the 6th? I thought
Tuesday.
It's on Tuesday the 5th.
Is that Labor Day? No, that's Tuesday.
Is it listed
No, it's
there?
gotta be Tuesday.
That follows?
So theoretically, if we were to vote to submit something, because
could.
we have to vote to submit it as a group then, and that's how, so it would need to be voted on if that's study
At the
session?
Either, or the August.
Or the August.
Board meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't we, if we have something
Already
specific
written.
about the election date in what we've already drafted?
Right, just
Can we
use
just
that.
lift it out?
Right.
Craft a comment and submit it?
Yeah.
And then it's just, we're not creating anything new, we're just,
Right.
it's a
That's-
statement.
Reiteration.
Yeah.
I would
And
like
it's
to
in-
say absolutely yes. We've really never done this where we've submitted something
Oh.
to them for consideration to put in the
Separately.
handbook. But I'm sure if we did it and it wasn't the right way, they would let us know how to fix it.
We
I
can
assume
dive
there's
into that.
a form
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah.
MSBA delegate.
Yeah, we'll find something.
Yeah, we got the perfect spokesperson if it comes to that.
But I hear you saying the individual responses are important also. Is that what you're saying, Angie?
I think it goes as submitted from the district, but
Okay.
it warrants further investigation.
Okay,
Because
fair enough.
as I recall, last year, I felt like this, I don't know if it was MSBA, I felt like they were a little soft on the November versus April, which troubled me a little bit. I would rather firm them up on April,
But if I read.
if we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
If that's what if they're giving us an opportunity to say,
I mean, I kind of
November,
felt like
April.
that's what the email from them
Right,
was saying. It was
right.
like, look, give us something here to
Yeah.
work with. Yeah.
Because my understanding from the email was, you guys haven't talked about this, and we won't advocate one way or the other for it because it's not
Yeah.
in our list of things to lobby for. So,
We will chase down.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
What the
MSBA
process.
We'll get a response.
and push that out to the board,
Yeah.
either in a separate email or a Friday update, and then think through what language we might want to present to the board for your, so we can do some back and forth and work with president, vice president, and delegate,
Delegate.
to have that timeline in place by the August board meeting,
Okay.
if you're okay with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
any other remarks?
I just want to comment on, I said this earlier when we were doing interviews, just how lucky are we, just how many talented people there are in this district and in this community who are willing to step forward and give their time. And then even within our LPS community, Kathy Ellermeyer being named as on the State Commission for School Nurse Council, to help provide, and that's incredible that we have our Director of Student Health Services serving in a statewide capacity to help, or Andrea Sumi with Library being asked to help make, when I was in school, library wasn't a special. It's like a special now with instructional, that she's helping put that together for librarians around the state. And Dr. Tucker's leadership around the state. I mean, Cindy Sullivan serving on the Missouri board. Like, how lucky are we? Like, that we've got such, we're just very fortunate in this district. It feels like a really, really exciting things happening, so.
And we show it by asking questions.
That's right, Rex.
We love you best when we ask lots of questions.
That's our love language.
I would like to comment. Am I correct? We only have 2 vacancies? Did you say that?
2 certificated staff vacancies.
I'm impressed with that, especially in the current economy we're in.
And
What's going on with
in
teachers?
conversations with other districts.
Pardon me? Oh. Okay.
There was a conversation or a headline from a district out east, which is a mega district, and hundreds of vacancies that they're still trying to fill. Different scale, but it really is reflective of the workforce challenges districts.
It suggests to me teamwork happening there.
Yes, very much so. And thank you guys already for pulling together your teams and getting them working together, and for certificated staff who aren't back yet, enjoy. I'm sure some of them have already started on PD, and it is almost August, the last couple of days, so enjoy your air-conditioned homes, because it's too hot to be outside. Any other remarks? Motion to adjourn?
I move the board adjourn.
Second?
Nick?
Yes.
AJ?
Yes.
Dan?
yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Angie?
Absolutely.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Aldrich.
You're welcome.